Behind every love story, there were secrets that the world was never supposed to know, and Steve Harvey's marriage was no exception. On the surface, everything looked perfect. The power couple, the fairy tale, the picture of love and success. But if people had looked a little closer, they would have seen shadows hiding behind the bright lights. You won't believe how deep these secrets went. And let me tell you, what looked like a dream was built on a past filled with crime, betrayal, and heartbreak. Steve Harvey was admired as the king of comedy, a man who had built himself from nothing into one of the most powerful names in entertainment. He had the money, the fame, the respect, and the woman he always called the love of his life, Marjorie Harvey. She was elegant, always dressed in style, always appearing confident and untouchable. Together, they looked like they had everything anyone could ever want. But here's the shocking part. Marjorie's story before she met Steve was nothing like the glamorous image she carried now. Her past was connected to men who lived dangerous double lives, men who risked everything in the underworld of drugs and crime. This is how the first twist came. Long before Steve Harvey entered her life, Marjorie was married to a man named Jim L. Townsend. He was not just a small-time hustler. He was a powerful drug kingpin, running a multi-million-dollar cocaine operation that reached across states. His name was whispered in criminal circles, feared and respected at the same time. And right there in the middle of this empire stood Marjorie, his wife. Court records later revealed how Townsend's drug business was built on power, money, and risk, and how it finally came crashing down when federal agents moved in. Townsend was sentenced to life in prison without parole, life, no second chances, and all of this happened while Marjorie was by his side. But this is where it gets interesting. The FBI did not only keep their eyes on Townsend, they also watched Marjorie very closely. Some believe she knew more than she admitted. There were even whispers that the only reason she escaped charges was because she quietly helped the authorities after her husband was caught. Townsend himself later claimed she cooperated to save herself. Whether that was the truth or the bitter words of a man serving life, no one could say for sure. Still, it raised a question. Was Marjorie simply caught in the wrong marriage, or was she playing a game of survival? Destiny took an unexpected turn when Townsend's empire collapsed. Marjorie walked away, but not from that world. Soon after, she found herself tied to another man, Donald Woods, who was also deeply involved in the Memphis drug scene. The craziest part was that this wasn't just a coincidence. People started saying it was a pattern. First Townsend, now Woods, two drug dealers in a row. Investigators once again noticed her name in those circles, though she was never charged. Woods, too, eventually faced legal trouble, and once again, Marjorie's marriage fell apart. Two husbands, both drug dealers, both destroyed by the same dangerous lifestyle. By this time, people were talking. Was Marjorie simply unlucky, or was she drawn to the money, the power, and the danger these men carried with them? Critics whispered she chased the lifestyle. Supporters argued she was just a woman who loved the wrong men. But what makes this story different? After escaping two marriages linked to drug empires, Marjorie was about to step into a completely new world, one that would change her life forever. And this is where Steve Harvey entered the picture. When Steve Harvey first laid eyes on Marjorie in the 1990s, it seemed like something out of a movie. He was performing at a comedy show in Memphis when she walked in late, sat right at the front, and immediately caught his attention. Steve stopped his set, looked at her, and told the crowd, "I don't know who you are, but I'm gonna marry you one day." It sounded romantic, almost like fate itself had stepped in. But here is the shocking part. At that very moment, Steve was still married to his second wife, Mary Lee Harvey. Behind the laughter on stage and the rising career, Steve's personal life was already on shaky ground. This is where it gets interesting. Steve was gaining fame, money, and respect, but his marriage was falling apart. Rumors of infidelity surrounded him, and financial pressure was building. Then came Marjorie, beautiful, confident, and different from anyone else in his life. Let me tell you, their connection was powerful, but it came with a heavy price. Mary Lee later claimed that Steve's relationship with Marjorie was the reason her marriage collapsed. She believed Marjorie wasn't just another woman, she was the woman who destroyed her family. The craziest part came when Mary Lee spoke publicly about it. After the divorce, she accused Steve of cheating with Marjorie even before their marriage had ended. She said she had been left with nothing while Steve moved on to live in luxury with Marjorie. The fight between them didn't just stay private. It went straight to the courts and later into the media spotlight. In 2011, Mary went so far as to post a series of emotional videos online, accusing Steve of betraying her, cheating, and even taking her son away from her. She claimed Steve had destroyed her spirit so badly that she described it as soul murder. But here is the shocking part. Despite all of Mary's claims, the courts ruled in Steve's favor. Judges stated that her accusations were not fully supported by evidence, and Steve was even given custody of their son, Winton. Mary, on the other hand, was ordered to stop making certain allegations publicly. Still, the damage had already been done. For the first time, Steve Harvey's carefully built image as a loyal family man began to crack in the public eye. This is how destiny took an unexpected turn. While Steve's reputation was bruised, Marjorie emerged as the woman who won. By 2007, she and Steve were married in a lavish wedding that made headlines everywhere. To the public, it looked like a love story fulfilled. Steve finally marrying the woman he had once declared as his future wife. But what makes this story different? It wasn't just a love story. It was a story wrapped in betrayal, lawsuits, heartbreak, and a past that refused to stay buried. When Steve and Marjorie tied the knot in 2007, the world saw nothing but a fairy tale. They were dressed in glamour, surrounded by wealth, and smiling like their love had conquered every storm. But here is the shocking part. The past that Marjorie thought she had left behind was not finished with her. The whispers about her two ex-husbands, both drug dealers, began to rise again, and the media started digging. Old court files, old names, and old scandals suddenly resurfaced, pulling Marjorie back into the same shadows she once walked away from. You won't believe how dangerous this became for Steve Harvey. At the very moment he was polishing his image as a motivational figure and America's family man, people began questioning who he had married. The headlines weren't just about Steve's success anymore. They started focusing on Marjorie's past connections to the drug world. Jim Townsend, her first husband, added fuel to the fire when he announced after his prison release that he was writing a tell-all book. He promised the world shocking details, even hinting that Marjorie knew more about his criminal empire than she ever admitted. For Steve, this wasn't just gossip. It was a threat to everything he had built. This is how things grew more intense. Insiders claim Steve panicked when he heard about Townsend's book. He feared it would not only drag Marjorie's name, but also damage his own empire. After all, Steve's career wasn't just about jokes anymore. He was hosting Family Feud, writing books about love and the relationships, and branding himself as the wise father figure who gave advice on faith and family. What makes this story different is that his entire fortune was tied to his image. If the image cracked, so did the empire. But here is the shocking part. Instead of running from the controversy, Marjorie leaned into it. She positioned herself as Steve's backbone, his ride-or-die partner who stood by him no matter what. Whenever people questioned her intentions, she doubled down on her role as the strong wife who saved Steve from his darkest days. And in many ways, it worked. The more rumors swirled, the more united they appeared. Steve publicly credited her for bringing balance into his life, for lifting him when he was broken, and for keeping him focused. Still, the craziest part was that while they looked stronger on the outside, the whispers behind closed doors never stopped. People questioned if their marriage was truly about love, or if it was a calculated partnership, a way to protect and grow the Harvey empire. Critics said Marjorie upgraded Steve's image, pushed him into bigger deals, and ensured she was tied to every part of his business. Destiny took an unexpected turn once again, because while Steve thought he had found his queen, many believed he had also inherited her baggage, and that baggage was getting harder to hide. Steve and Marjorie Harvey looked like the ultimate power couple. They traveled the world in private jets, wore designer clothes, and posted pictures that made people believe they were living a flawless love story. But here is the shocking part. Behind the glamorous lifestyle, cracks were forming that many people didn't see. Their marriage was not just about love, it was also about survival, reputation, and business. Together, they built a brand that was more than husband and wife. It was a partnership built on wealth, fame, and influence. But what makes this story different is that the very same brand could collapse if their controversies ever grew too big. This is how the questions began. Could Steve's empire truly survive the weight of Marjorie's past? Every time her old ties to drug dealers resurfaced, it threatened his carefully polished image as America's father figure. And then came the craziest part. Insiders whispered that divorce was never really an option for them. Not because of love, but because splitting up would destroy too much. Their businesses, their foundation, their finances, and even their public influence were tied so tightly together that walking away would mean losing everything they had built. You won't believe how much pressure this put on Steve. His estimated $200 million fortune relied almost entirely on his clean reputation. He hosted Family Feud, wrote books on love and faith, and gave advice to millions who saw him as the wise voice of reason. But if the public ever decided that his family life was fake, the empire would begin to crumble. Network executives already kept an eye on him, worried about how far the scandals could go. Hollywood had no problem replacing stars when money was at stake, and Steve knew it. Let me tell you, the Harveys fought hard to control their image. They launched charity events, fashion projects, and business ventures, all carefully designed to keep their brand shining. And yet, whispers never fully died. People still debated whether Marjorie had truly left her past behind, or if she simply learned how to cover it better. Destiny took an unexpected turn when Steve married her, because instead of escaping controversy, he had brought it directly into his empire. So, what was the truth? Was Steve and Marjorie's marriage really the love story that conquered all odds? Or was it the greatest performance they ever gave? One thing was clear. Behind every smile on social media, there was a story of power, betrayal, survival, and secrets that refused to stay buried. And while the world kept watching their glamorous life, the real question remained: how long could the Harveys keep their perfect image from falling apart